You're listening to the RTI Press Pass powered by Rocky Top Insider.
All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of the RTI Press Pass podcast. Today is Thursday the 13th. Boy, it's good to be talking a little bit of Tennessee football with you guys. As always, my name is Rick Butler, talking shop here with Ryan Shumpert there in the top right corner, and of course, Ryan Sylvia at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on YouTube, which is a great way to take in the show, you can also do so on podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and of course, the WATE Smart TV app. We are there with their loaded sports section of coverage as well. Gentlemen, it's good to be talking to you guys again. Last week, we talked about the offensive side of the ball, gave sort of a preview, but the difference between then and now is that now we've got a little bit of football in front of our eyeballs to take some observations away from. It has been about 8 days since the start of Tennessee fall camp. We've seen 6 practices, although some a little bit more limited than others. I think one was maybe a good 15-minute stretch. Others have been maybe a 5-minute stretch. So results may vary on what we've on the amount that we've seen, but certainly we have seen some football. Guys, it's good to be back in this mode. College football is right around the corner. NFL preseason is back today. It's a fun time of the year, certainly. How are you guys doing? Shump, we'll start with you.
Doing well. I was going to ask y'all, because y'all were at Saturday's practice and I was not, and I know that was also a 2-period practice. Which day did y'all watch less? Yesterday being Wednesday or Saturday?
Probably Saturday. Saturday was
That's
real
crazy.
in and out.
Yeah,
Saturday
felt impossible to be shorter.
I mean, it was pretty much the same, but Saturday
I would also
shorter.
say that Wednesday was more entertaining because, as you can see on the RTI YouTube with our highlight videos, there were some routes on air.
I threw us to bone.
Maybe I didn't wander over to that section of the field on Wednesday or on Saturday, but I don't remember anything that exciting happening. It felt like get in, get some video of the big body boys, and then we were kind of scurried right out of the way. So it felt like Saturday was maybe the shorter and less consequential viewing period that we had. But that's what you get this time of year.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not radically different than the past, but that one it felt. I think we were out there for about 8 minutes on Wednesday, so I was curious how Saturday compared. But the routes on air is nice. That's a nice little bone to at least have that.
Yeah, routes on air is something that we got to see with our own eyes, and you can go and check out some of the highlights, as I just mentioned, over on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, which go ahead, if you're watching this video on YouTube, if you are heading over there after watching a podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the latest Tennessee news, notes, and activity, especially with fall camp still ramping up a little bit as we get through the month here. You can find player interviews, coaching interviews, highlight tapes, and of course, our different podcasts that we will have to kind of keep you updated on the latest happenings throughout the year, so on and so forth. Guys, as I mentioned a little while ago, we're going to be talking about the defensive side of the ball after admittedly, our offensive preview went a little bit overboard time-wise, so we didn't get to talk about any of the defense, but we'll do that today. The fun thing is that, again, we're getting to add some of those takeaways from the first 6 practices inside of our conversation here today. But before we get there, let's backtrack to the offense a little bit. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterback situation. You've got freshman Faison Brandon. You've got sophomore George McIntyre. Those are obviously the 2 lead horses in this race. Has there been anything that has surprised you about this quarterback battle so far? Just kind of letting the people know where we're at. We've gotten to see, obviously, kind of the warm-up stages of the practices. And again, we've gotten to see routes on air a couple of different times. As we've mentioned in the past, we do feel like this battle is going to come down to the scrimmage section, which the media will not be privy towards. But has there anything on the field surprised you? Has anything sort of have you taken any mental notes of anything yet? Sylvia, I'll start with you as sort of the lead author on our practice observations over on the website.
I mean, this isn't going to be good advertising for people to go read the practice notes, but not really. I mean, it's just kind of routes on air. So you're only going to see so much of it. I think we'll find out a lot more. As you said, it's close to the media, so we won't literally get to watch it. But what you hear stuff afterwards. We'll talk to Josh Heupel afterwards, and he can tell us what he wants to tell us about what transpired in Neyland for the scrimmage. Those will tell you a lot more about it. We're just kind of watching guys warm up essentially. So I guess the takeaway so far is George and Faison have the arm talent, right? Like the ball comes out faster. I think if you put him on the radar gun and you did a competition on who could throw harder, Faison Brandon would win from what we've seen so far. But it's not like George is throwing ducks and throwing it slow. Like he can get out there too. It's definitely a step ahead of Ryan Staub, definitely a step, and Ryan Staub's a step ahead of Mason Phillips in that department too. So you can kind of see the hierarchy fall in that order. But between Faison and George, I don't know how you can make a decision so far from what we've seen. I don't think the coaches can really make a decision to a certain extent from what they've seen. It's really going to matter what happens this Saturday in that first scrimmage, and then was the next Saturday too. They head back to Neyland for their second scrimmage. I think those will be the real telling points. But it is fun to watch them throw. It's fun to see you can kind of tell who's got a good day started. Some guys they'll miss a couple high or something like that before dialing in. Some guys are just around the money to start. So it's interesting to watch, but it's not going to tell you who's going to win the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anything from what we've seen has been surprising, and I don't think this is shocking either. But from all accounts, George McIntyre has gotten off to a good start, and again, I don't think that's shocking by any means, but it definitely makes the competition a lot more interesting, given all the buzz had been Faison Brandon going into camp, but all the buzz being Faison Brandon was around him having caught up to McIntyre and maybe been slightly better than him in the spring. It wasn't like Brandon had been night and day better than McIntyre in the spring, and this was all a formality. It felt like they were still pretty close coming in. You wondered if Brandon could step on the gas right at the start of camp and really run away with the job, but it doesn't seem like that's happened. And again, as you said, Sylvia, it'll come down to the two scrimmages, and if all is equal, I would guess Faison Brandon will start against Furman, but I will have a better idea next week how this battle looks, and then probably a much better idea in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm with you guys. I think that not that I was really saying it with my chest all the way, making our predictions last week, but I still think that at least from a bird's eye view, this thing is still open. I think these guys are competing there in practice. I think that Josh Heupel and his staff are still taking those notes. Again, we heard week one that they're analyzing every single snap and every single throw of this fall camp slate so far. And so I still think that evaluation period is going on, and we'll see how things go. I think if you're maybe someone who wanted to write off George McIntyre early, you can't do that yet by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, there you go. So to me, this thing is still an open competition, still guys going out there to compete for that job, and we'll be able to kind of update anything that comes our way, maybe during the next press pass, certainly on Rocky Top Insider whenever those things start to come out, and we hear a little bit more about what happens from the scrimmages. Which, by the way, is the first scrimmage this Saturday, and then another one the Saturday after that. Is that sort of the timeline that we're looking at?
Yep.
Okay, there you go. So be sure to put that on your calendar and be checking out RockyTopInsider.com whenever that happens. Real quick, just on the quarterback note, Sylvia, you're wearing your throwback, I guess, Oilers logo hat. Hendon Hooker returns to football tonight, right? With the Titans. The home state team for many Volunteer fans out there, a little preseason action for number 5.
He sure does. And like I said, this is the throwback. The Oilers are the throwback of the vintage Titans logo from like 99 till this year. Now we got the new logo. So put some respect on the throwback hat. But yeah, Hendon Hooker I think they said they're going to play all 4 guys. I assume Cam Ward will get 1 series. They'll get him out. Trubisky will get 1 or 2. They'll get him out and then see what. Oh, Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, two 22 guys going at it for that third string job for the Titans. So that'll be fun. I think it's been a while since we've kind of seen Hendon Hooker play football. So it's always fun to watch him play.
In a world of uncharitable former players who used to wear number 5, Hendon Hooker is a very charitable former player who used to wear number 5. I mean, just dishing that thing all over the place. What a story that came out, I guess, overnight with Jaden Daniels in LSU. That one is certainly a doozy, but again, not surprising in the just wild and wacky world of college football.
Yeah, that was a wild new story to wake up to overnight. Yeah, I don't. It's I think most people had the reaction to Jaden Daniels being a little crazy. I think it's more fun to just rip on Lane Kiffin for not respecting LSU's legacy. To me, that's personally a more fun narrative to spin.
But then you also have Brian Kelly making promises on the recruiting trail, that never got fulfilled in the first place, that now Lane Kiffin feels like he is obligated to uphold. It's just it's again just you got a weird dynamic there with Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin and these promises and obligations and fulfillments and all sorts of wacky stuff. So interesting things happening down there in Baton Rouge. All right, back to Knoxville side of things though. Guys, as we get into the defense, I kind of posed this question to you to figure out where we're going to start, which position group we are. But this is one of the questions that I heard being kicked around an NFL radio show the other day, and I thought it was interesting. It got me thinking about the Tennessee side of things. So I'll pose this question to you guys, and Sylvia, I'll start with you. Looking at this defense as a whole, we know there's a lot of new players, and we don't exactly know how they're all going to mesh, but I think we have a pretty decent idea of what it's going to look like there day one. If there's anybody on this team, and I sort of lead into this because of the injuries that Tennessee has been racking up, not that it's necessarily been to starting players, but they've still been there from a rotational side of things. Who is Tennessee's most important player on this defense? Who can Tennessee not afford to lose, for any reason, just sort of as we head into this year, whether it be on any three level? Is there a guy that immediately comes to mind for you? Because at least for me thinking about this, I came to like 4 or 5 different guys, and I might need y'all's help kind of narrowing it down a little bit.
I think you got to look at that from a depth standpoint a lot too, just given the nature of defense and how much you're going to try to rotate at different spots. So like at cornerback, yeah, you already lost Jadis Richard. That sucks. He probably wasn't going to be your starter anyway. He might have been the 4th string guy or the CB4, I should say, kind of a 2nd string guy anyway, behind obviously Kane Lee, Ty Redmond. I think Trey Poteet put himself in a nice spot to maybe be that 3rd cornerback anyway. So cornerback, I kind of rule out. Safety, you got 3 guys that you're really comfortable with. I kind of rule that out. The star position, Quay Moss is great at the top, and there's maybe not a lot of depth behind him. But you look at what they can do with how deep that linebacker room is, which again rules that group out. But you're really comfortable going to a 4-3 look, I think, in taking the nickelback spot off the field if you need to. So I go to the defensive line, which is going to be the biggest question on this team. I think the interior has enough depth, assuming that some younger guys can take a step like they think they will, like Isaiah Campbell and Ethan Utley. So then it's the edge rushers. And I'll go with Jordan Norman just because of how the whole Chaz Coleman situation unfolded and how he's no longer with the team. I think Jordan Norman was probably going to be the starter anyway, even if Chaz Coleman was here. But it just puts even more emphasis on keeping him healthy and having him play a bunch of snaps, because when you look at what's behind him, it's Christian Gass, who has seemingly taken a good step forward this offseason from a strength and conditioning standpoint to put himself in a spot that he can consistently play this year after being hurt last year and coming in undersized. Then behind that, it's a group of true freshmen. I think they really like Hezekiah Harris. I think they really like Kedrick Golston. But there's going to be a lot on Jordan Norman's plate, the Tulane transfer. So that's the first one that comes to mind. And I guess if you go 1A, 1B, then you flip it over to the other edge rusher spot at defensive end. Like, you're going to need Tyree Weathersby to play and to be good. And he hasn't really been asked to do that yet. He's been a reserve guy. He's battled a bunch of injuries himself. He's going to have to be healthy this year. And then Marion Dye behind him. I mean, we're talking hot takes. I think Marion Dye could have a really nice season. And we'll get a little deeper into that later in the show. But I think Marion Dye, Tyree Weathersby, Jordan Norman, you need those guys to be healthy on the edge, because if you lose even one of them, then things really start to get sketchy if they're not already.
Yeah, I think when Ricky first posed the question, like, who is the most important player, Jordan Norman came to mind, just because he's a guy that, if you could say someone on Tennessee's defense is going to have a breakout all SEC type season, who, this player has not been an all SEC contributor at any point in their career, that's probably the guy I would choose. I think Weathersby is a good pool just because he hasn't stayed healthy. Like, if you're going to look at it from the, a guy you can't afford an injury, like, that's kind of a spot that would really hurt you if he gets injured. And he's been injured a lot in his career. But I also think, and you touched on it, Sylvia, I would think you would put Ty Redmond or Kenyon Lee on this list too, because I think really the strength of his defense in a lot of ways could be that cornerback duo if they stay healthy. And it does feel like Trey Petit has made nice strides. So it's not just a complete fall off the cliff with your depth standpoint, but there's still question marks there. He still hasn't, proven himself at the SEC level. And, with Richard Hurd, like, I don't really know where they go after that. So, I think it probably is those edge guys you talked about, just because that's spots where you need to play a lot of guys, and Tennessee is really shaky on who plays behind that starting, really behind those three, Norman, Dye, and Weathersby. I feel confident those three are going to play a lot of snaps. Who plays behind those guys? But, I think corner has a chance to really be a strength on this defense, and it would certainly be a blow if either of those guys got injured.
Well, like you said, with Trey Petit, I think you like him a lot as cornerback 3, playing 15 snaps a game, a lot more than you like him as cornerback 2, playing the entire game. So, just wanted to circle. Like, I think Trey Petit could be really good in his career, and I think he could have a nice season. But, he's certainly, you feel more comfortable with him being in a reserve role than being thrust into action like Ty Redmond was early last year.
Yeah, I agree with you guys in a lot of ways. The four guys that I was kind of cycling through my head: Jordan Norman, Kane Lee, Xavier Gilliam, and I actually did have Quay Moss on that list. And Sylvia, I think you make a good point about, hey, Tennessee can adapt, whether it's adding an extra linebacker to the field. I think that Tennessee's probably pretty good at safety. We'll get into that here in a bit with Dazon Lane, with Idris Farouk, and with who's the third name that's escaping me?
Metcalf.
And TJ Metcalf. So maybe you add one of those guys to the field. Maybe you do something. But I just think that, to me, Quay Moss is the only star right now. And so if they do want to continue that look, then, you need to have him on the field. But
that's where I'll just say Richard's such a sneaky loss, because, he wasn't going to start anywhere, but he was that Swiss Army knife in the back end of the defense who has played at big schools and has proven that he's a solid, he's not a stud, but he is a solid player that's capable
2 years
of
ago,
filling
he was
in
really
and playing.
solid.
Yeah, so that's, again, it's no one's hit the panic button over that, and I'm not saying anybody should hit the panic button over that, but I do think that's maybe a bigger loss than people are giving credit for.
Well, let's kind of just start out there and talk about the secondary in depth a little bit more. This is obviously a position on the field where you've had so much turnover, whether it's been guys that you brought in from the portal. And I can remember talking to you guys several months ago, and we talked about sort of what's Tennessee's path through the portal? What do they need to do? We all kind of felt like, well, just load up on secondary guys. Go out there and let them compete and see kind of, a little Macho Man Randy Savage quote. See, the cream will rise to the top, and see what happens there. I think that we have our idea on what Tennessee's maybe starting unit's going to look like. I think maybe we have an idea on what the depth's going to look like a little bit. But either way, you've had a lot of turnover there from a coach's perspective too. You've got Derek Jones as the incoming cornerbacks coach, who's a really fun to watch out there on the practice field. Sylvia and I were talking about the other day while we were out there on the grass. He's electric. I hope they give him maybe one of these mic'd up videos soon. And then you've got Anthony Poindexter, who's the co-DC, came over Jim Knowles. He seems to be more the safeties guy, but certainly the secondary as a broad unit overall. Ty Redmond has been one of the early stories that he's been out with sickness. We did see him back on the field, and I think maybe a limited role. Somebody can correct me if there's a little bit more to say there. But I think that this group, I feel like maybe I'm cautiously optimistic about it. I like what Tennessee has on the corners. I like Kane Lee with all his SEC experience. I like Ty Redmond based on what he did last year. I really like that trio of the trio of safeties. We'll see which one of them two start. I would imagine there's rotation. And I like Quay Moss at the star position. We'll get into maybe a position group we're not as optimistic about soon, but is it fair to say that I'm pretty cautiously optimistic and maybe even trickling into a little excited about what the secondary can be?
I think it's completely fair. I'll go a step farther. I'm bullish on the secondary. I think the secondary could be pretty good.
Buying the stock.
I am, and that leads me into a hot take. Or, well, I can't remember. What were we calling them? Were we calling them hot takes, bold predictions?
I don't know.
Whatever we're gonna call
whatever
them.
All
it
the
is.
same.
I think Kay and Lee and Ty Redmond will be the best cornerback duo Tennessee has had under Josh Heupel, which basically says I think it'll be better than Jermon McCoy and Ricky Gibson were 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, last year's group wasn't bad either.
Last year's group was good too, especially the back half of the year once Ty Redmond had kind of settled in. I'm really high on Redmond, and I think Kayan Lee was maybe the single best player they got in the transfer portal. At least he had played at the highest level of anyone to that point. Maybe Xavier Gillum, as he steps into his junior year, will prove to be better or something like that. But I mean, that's a guy that was a cornerback one on an Auburn defense that was good last year. I mean, Auburn, as Sylvia knows, Auburn was so close. They were
so unbelievably close. And what's unfair about how close they were is now Alex Golesh is going to get all the credit for the hard work that the previous staff put in and how close he got them.
It's exactly right. So, I'm really high on that group. I think the safeties, I don't think the ceiling's quite as high, but the fact that you have 3 guys that I think are very capable players, I think they're going to be better there than they've been. I worry about depth in nickel a little bit, but Quay Moss is a solid player. I just think the secondary is going to be good. I don't know if it'll be great, but I think it's going to be good, and they're going to need it to be with some of the question marks with the pass rush.
I think, I mean, I'm essentially right with you, Shumpert. I think Rick was just kind of maybe dipping his toe in the water, and he might really be in the same boat as us. But I think this defensive back rotation is pretty good. The safety spot to me, you said it'll be the best cornerback. I think this will be the best safety rotation they've had. You look at what you bring in with TJ Metcalf, who's another guy who's played a bunch of football at a high level between Arkansas and Michigan. You bring in Dazon Lane, who clearly they liked from Penn State. If you have the co-defense coordinator and safeties coach Anthony Poindexter vouching for him to follow to Tennessee, if you have the defensive coordinator Jim Knowles vouching for him to follow to Tennessee, clearly they liked what they had in him last year. And then Idris Farouk's a guy that they can't stop talking about. They're we pretty much had no clue who this kid was. Maybe remembered him a little bit from recruiting and stuff like that, but wasn't on our radar at all. And then you get to campus, and it, by all accounts, sounds like they are pretty much planning on starting him to start the end. All 3 guys are going to play, but it sounds like probably you're looking at starters, TJ Metcalf, Idris Farouk, getting Dazon Lane a bunch of snaps in there as well. That's a really good trio. And when you look back to the safety spot for Tennessee, even in the years their defense was playing well, that was not necessarily a strong point. They had good performances, they had breakout plays from different guys, but it wasn't like you're looking at that safety room and you're like, man, that this defense is really running because those safeties are playing great football right now. So I think that's really exciting. I think the cornerback room's got a really high upside, like you were saying, Shumper, between Ty Redmond, who, I mean, people forget was not an all freshman SEC guy, just an all SEC guy as a freshman last year. He made a 3rd team either by the media or coaches. I think it was coaches for how he finished down the stretch last year. And then Kayan Lee, he has really nice upside, as you were saying, from his time in Auburn. I think the thing with him too is the floor is so high. I think it would be pretty shocking if you're like, man, Kayan Lee's having a bad year. It just seems like at minimum, it's gonna be Kayan Lee's really solid for you out at corner. I really like Quay Moss. As we said, that's kind of the biggest question, I guess, is what's behind Quay Moss. Isaiah Hardage, the Colorado transfer, maybe JT Theodore is a guy they might try to get in there as a true freshman. I just don't think you're going to see that go very far down the depth chart, like we said, too, though, because you're so deep at linebacker. I think you're just kind of itching to get any sort of additional snaps for the linebackers down the depth chart. So that makes a lot of sense. And then Trey Poteet, what are you going to get from him? How much do you trust him to rotate in? If those are your biggest questions, are who are some of those guys down the depth chart, though, it's shaping up to be a really good secondary.
Here, well, I'll ask a question for both of y'all. How would you, if you had to power rank the 3 safeties as far as who you think will be the best, who you had the most confidence in? How are you power ranking them?
I know I'm going Farouk first.
I am too. Just the way the coaches are talking about him, it's like, man, they are stunned with how good he is.
Yeah, I am too. I was trying to pull this up a second ago, so I'll hopefully be able to do this quickly on the fly. Where's maybe one of the stats I was looking for? I don't know. He led the SEC in some sort of stat last year that was pretty impressive.
He might have led the SEC. Well, probably didn't. I don't know if he led the SEC. He had a ton of forced fumbles.
That was it. He was 6th in the nation in forced fumbles and 2nd in the SEC. He had 4. I think that Sylvia was right on the money. I think that he is maybe one of those candidates to take a leap up. And not because he had a low starting point, but like into that territory of, all right, he might be, one of the, I don't want to maybe say one of the absolute best, but kind of in that top-ish tier of SEC safeties. I think that he's a guy that everybody's talking about, halfway through the year is, holy cow, what a gem this guy is. And then I go back and forth a little bit between Metcalf and Lane myself. I think the question that you were posing doesn't include Moss.
Correct. Yeah.
No.
I Lane obviously has the natural advantage of Anthony Poindexter coaching style, Jim Knowles coaching style, but I like what Metcalf brings to the table. And I went back and watched some of his highlights over the course of the summer. I think he's he's a really good athlete. He's a fluid mover. I think that he does have pretty good instinct for the ball. It wouldn't surprise me to see if those two guys, have a good bit of rotation. I don't know who's going to be the starting, but I know I'm going with Farouk first, and then I'm deciding between probably Metcalf and then Lane, but you could convince me either one.
I'm going Metcalf too. And this is maybe a really stupid way to look at it, but I guess I'm more so using it to further my thought than as the primary source of why I think this. But you look at what they put out at Tennessee Local Media Day. It was Idris Farouk and TJ Metcalf. That does show you at least something that the Winhor. There's at least some sort of thought in the building that those are two good players. Like, they're not going to put out a guy like, oh man, he had a bad spring and not a great summer and he's not hitting the weight room well. Like, they're not going to put a guy like that out for media day, right? So it's not that black and white. You don't Sharpie in the depth chart based on who they put out there. I'm not saying that. But I already thought that was probably your two starting safeties. That just kind of, I guess, is another point towards it, even though it's a small point. So I think that's at least they're two leaders in the room, I guess. But I would have already said that. I think Idris is someone they really like. I think he has all SEC upside, I guess. TJ Metcalf, I think he's your number two guy. Like, if you're start bench cutting, I think you go start Idris Farouk, bench TJ Metcalf, cut Dazon Lane. But Dazon Lane's going to play a bunch of football too. And that's something that they haven't had the luxury of doing in recent years, is playing three guys back there. It's been a lot of two guys back there playing like the entire game. You look at the snap counts for Andre Turrentine and Will Brooks and a bunch of guys that they had back there. They were just spam. I mean, you got Jacoby Thomas in the mix a bit in 24, but even then, you were just kind of playing your guys for a lot of it. This will be the most rotation they've had. I think it'll be the strongest safety group they've had. I would still probably say 24, Jermod and Ricky's the best cornerback tandem they'll have since Heupel took over. But I do not hate the take that Shumpert had that those corners could be right up there too.
I would go Metcalf over Farouk in the rankings at safety, but that's the only, and I don't feel super strongly about that. And then with the corner take, like, it, I think the big thing is one of Lee and Ty Redmond are going to have to play like at a really high level, because I mean Jermon was just so good.
He was like defender of the year, like it was unbelievable.
But maybe they can average out to a better combined spot, I think would be the thought there. By the way, somebody remind me of our Middle Tennessee to Miami friend.
Jacoby Thomas. I shout him out.
Thomas, thank you.
I give him a hat tip.
I think that Quay Moss is going to give Tennessee fans some Jacoby Thomas vibes.
Big hitter.
That I think that he's just going to annihilate like 3 or 4 dudes throughout the year. I mean, just, knock them back into yesterday. Like, I think that he's a good player. I think that he's the right kind of nickel for Tennessee to have, the star position. But you go back and look at some of the big hits, like, guys might still be feeling those. I think that Tennessee fans are going to love his big hit ability. So we shall see. He had a fun mic'd up video, by the way, that came out yesterday, in case you hadn't seen that. All right, let's go from maybe our most optimistic group on the defense to maybe the most pessimistic group on the defense, and that would be the defensive line. Obviously, you have tons and tons of turnover in that spot. And rather than new guys who have come in, yes, there's been a few, Xavier Gilliam, Jordan Norman. Tennessee is more so looking in that room for guys to step up. Previously, highly recruited guys. I see y'all snickering about there's something up there. I don't know what it is. I'm going to keep on going.
Don't look at the private chat. Just
I
don't look
won't.
at the private chat.
I have no intention to. Again, that's a group that you're relying on multiple guys, I think, to take a step up and get to that next level, whether it's sophomore Ethan Utley, whether it's sophomore Isaiah Campbell, whether it's sophomore Marion Dye. These are guys who, have got to be able to take a step in the right direction for Tennessee. You've got Nathan Robinson. You've got Xavier Gilliam. Both of those guys have drawn strong reviews here during fall camp so far. I think that you need David Hobbs to not only stay healthy, I think you need to get him to one of those maybe all SEC level spots. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure what to make of this group. I think that there's certainly talent, but I think maybe it's sort of one of those they're a year away type of groups. I'll let you guys kind of give some opening thoughts, and then I have quotes from both Rodney Garner and Jim Knowles to share about this group.
I think that's a lot of just even the edge rushers. It's like you look at what it projects to be next year, and it's like, okay, well, you're putting in a lot of blue chip guys, a lot of really highly recruited guys, a lot of really talented guys. They're just young in their career. As far as the interior of the defensive line, I mean, you just desperately need David Hobbs and Nathan Robinson to stay healthy, which they've both battled with some injuries throughout their career. So if you can keep those guys healthy, you throw in Xavier Gilliam, that's a trio that I think is, SEC caliber. Is it going to be the best interior defensive line in the SEC? No. Is it enough that you can have a good defense and win a lot of games? Yeah, I think so. It's what's behind them. You definitely need at least one of Isaiah Campbell and Ethan Utley to take a step into being like, okay, I trust you to consistently play and to be a consistent factor there. Especially because I think there's a chance we see David Hobbs slide out and rush off the edge sometimes. He has experience doing it. He's put on enough of a, muscle and weight that he's not necessarily the defensive end frame that he maybe was when he got to campus. But I still think the skill set's there, and if the need's there, they'll try to do that. But then that opens up your interior to, okay, now you got to start to figure out ways to supplement there. Isaiah Campbell has shown flashes. He's been in a red non-contact jersey throughout fall camp. So I'm curious what's holding him back, how much he's able to do. Cause I think he would be the candidate for me. That would be like, yeah, that guy could take a step and everyone's going to love him for what he does as a sophomore. But Ethan Utley's just as capable. And then past that, I mean, you're looking at some true for like, is JJ Finch going to give you something as a true freshman? Is Darrell Rivers, Darian Albert? Like you're just kind of starting to scratch down the depth chart too. These really talented guys that were really highly recruited, but they're true freshmen. So how much are you actually realistically going to get from them at the defensive line in the trenches of all places? It's the depth that concerns me. I don't mind the top of the room, though. When healthy, David Hobbs, Nathan Robinson, fantastic. And especially after the spring he seemingly had, another guy, you put Idris Farouk and Xavier Gilliam in the same boat of guys that this coaching staff seems to absolutely love what they did in the spring.
Yeah, those two guys seem to be, at least defensively, if not the entire team, like the two highest off-season risers as far as what they did, which makes sense. I mean, they both played tons of snaps in their sophomore seasons last year, and then this is kind of the year you expect big jumps out of them. So, yeah, I'm with you. Defensive tackle feels like they're like a body short is kind of how I view it.
A Jackson Moy short.
Yeah, just like a
second group that you could put in.
Just a solid backup defensive tackle that can play 25 to 35 snaps a game. Because right now, like I feel pretty good about five. Like I think Hobbs and Gillum are both like definitely SEC starting level players, and you have five guys. Always prefer six, but then Utley and Campbell, there's just a little bit of unknown with them. Like between Nathan Robinson and David Hobbs, consistent injury concerns, and the fact that you're banking on two sophomores to really play big snaps for the first time, like. I would just feel a lot better if you had at least one other guy that was, pretty proven and, doesn't have to be an all SEC type player, but someone you could go count on to play a handful of snaps a game.
I agree.
What we're going to see is Matthew Butler level of 2021 snap count from one of these. If someone gets hurt, like you have to. And I just looked it up. This is just what popped up on Google really quick. 13 games, 726 snaps for Matthew Butler in 2021 at defensive tackle. You would hope it doesn't get to that point, but like as you're saying, like David Hobbs gets banged up again, Nathan Robinson has to miss a game, Xavier Gilliam has to miss a game. Like someone's got to step up and just like hunker down in there.
Matthew Butler is such a beast. Such
He
an
was a
underrated
monster.
ball.
He had the Butler Burger at one of those local burger joints. I'll never forget that from first year covering the team. Is that somebody gave me an NIL
I want
deal?
to say.
I think it was too. That was a big deal at the time. There's talent in the room. It's young talent. They've got to figure out a way to step up. You can't. You've got to be able to stop the run. I think that's an important part of what this group has to do. You can have talent in the room, but the talent's got to make an impact. You can make an impact, but you got to do it consistently. And that's one of the things that Rodney Garner talked about yesterday. Here was one of his quotes from his press conference on Wednesday. Just coming out of yesterday, just been very inconsistent. You have a good day, you've got a bad day. Obviously, you're not moving the needle when you're going up and down. Can't have those roller coaster moments. And like I told him this morning in the meeting, we've got to be climbing the mountain every day. We can't take steps backwards. Nobody's got time to hear. Nobody wants to hear about being young, who all we lost, all that. It's irrelevant. We've got to be moving that needle every single day out there as we go on the field. Nathan Robinson sort of followed up on that a little bit. He talked about how the defensive line unit, they want to call themselves mountain climbers. They want to be ascending. They don't want to be losing footing. And again, that's not just that's a pretty way to string those words together, but it does matter, right? Tennessee's got to be able to have some consistency, or else that's how opposing offenses are going to attack you, especially if the secondary is as good as we think that they're going to be. Then you could be susceptible in the run game if somebody figures out how to way to exploit those trenches a little bit. Maybe you're battling an injury, maybe you're battling inconsistency. It's just if you're me and you're talking about how to attack this Tennessee defense, that's the first thing I'm saying until proving otherwise. Now, at the same time, though, the secondary can only be good for so long unless Tennessee is able to get pressure on the quarterback. And then you get to those edge rushers positions, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the show today with Jordan Norman. You've got a Christian Gass back there. You've got a Kedrick Golston back there who can maybe make an impact. Again, it's a room where somebody's going to need to step up and be able to be another guy who can make a difference right there. I think with Chaz Coleman departing the program, with Tennessee parting ways from him this offseason, who, by the way, seems to be back on the workout trail doing something or another. He's slinging some dummies around. You don't know what you're going to get there. And I think that's how the coaching staff feels as well, which we'll get to, which is proven by a quote that I'll get to here in a minute.
Yeah, I think the Rodney Garner stuff, he's never happy. Like it's, sure. It's a different level. It's a different type of coach speak.
It's true.
Where, he's just always, these guys aren't consistent enough. We need more. So that, that part didn't surprise me. I thought him saying Jordan Norman and Xavier Gillum had been their two best defensive linemen to date was notable. Gillum didn't surprise me at all. Norman, I thought, not that it was shocking, but was a good sign for all the reasons we've talked about. And then I think Sylvie, I don't know if you've posted it. I know you're writing about it. I thought his quotes about being Rodney Garner, that is, his quotes about himself being rejuvenated, the coach, after missing time in the spring, after having surgery was really interesting. And, he's been, you look back, and Rick, you said it starts with being able to stop the run. You look back at Josh Heupel's first couple teams at Tennessee, and while they defensively were not very good, they could stop the run. And those defensive lines played well in that way. They maybe weren't always great at getting home and rushing the passer, but they were going to play good gap sound football and be able to get a push up front and stop the run. And, I think that would be on its own, a big win for Tennessee if they do that this season. Because obviously the run defense last year was the worst it had been in any year since Josh Heupel had been in Tennessee.
To your point about Rodney Garner, I mean, you were talking to him in 2024 when there was hands down, this is the best defense line in the country. No one can do anything against them. And we got to take another step here. This is, unacceptable. That's just Rodney Garner. He's gonna be like that. But there is some concerns. I think what you said too about Jordan Norman, there was the same word I was thinking, where it's like, yeah, I mean, that's what you wanted to hear about him. I don't know if it was surprising, but it's like, okay, good first step, because you're going to need a lot from him. As far as the guys behind him, you mentioned Kedrick Golston, Rick. I think that's a guy who could, if there's one freshman across the entire defensive line that is going to make an instant impact, I think that would be my pick, is Kedrick Golston. He just looks the part from an NFL, bloodline. He's known Rodney Garner his whole life just because his dad got coached by him. back at Georgia back in the day. Like, he just seems like a guy who's ready to make an impact quickly. He physically looks the part. Like, he doesn't look like a freshman that's got to come in and put on a bunch of weight or something like that. Like, he looks SEC ready. So I like him. I like Hezekiah Harris is a name that's been thrown around as well at Leo as someone that could play early. Those are two true freshmen that I would not be surprised at all if they got in the mix. And then Christian Gass, we talked a little bit about him earlier, but like the work he put in this offseason to put himself in a position to play this year from a physical standpoint is admirable. And I think that has to have you at least somewhat encouraged, because even last year, Josh Heupel in the defensive staff seemed pretty excited about the player he could be. They were excited when he was cleared to come back and start to get some reps in. So now that he's taken the step to add to his frame, and he's not just a tall middle linebacker, but looks like a Leo, and he's bulked up to be able to do that and beat tackles off the edge and all that stuff. I think you have to be at least a little optimistic about what he can give you behind Jordan Norman when Jordan Norman needs to come off the field. You're muted, Rick.
Thanks. Last week, talking to Jim Knowles, one of the things he said that generated a little bit of buzz. Question was on where Tennessee can generate a pass rush after losing Chas Coleman. He said, quote, "Time will tell, right? Time will tell." Which, in itself, leaving the quote here for a
It's
second,
a question.
funny way to answer that question. Time will tell. It's like, yeah, I guess it will. Back to the quote. "Real sorry not having Chaz. I hope the best for him as a young man. Time will tell with the pass rush." Because you're never hitting the quarterback or trying not to get close to the quarterback when you're in camp. A lot of these things in pass rush, you don't see until you get to the game. It's kind of how Chaz made his mark last year at Penn State. He came in the game late, and we set up opportunities for him in the game just to be creative in pass rush. So it's a question mark, and time will tell how that goes. But we need to have other tools in the toolbox to create pass rush if need be, and we'll have that again. Bit of a funny quote coming from Jim Knowles on what was the first day of Tennessee fall camp media days last week. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I think with this unit, hopefully they can step into a serviceable place for this Tennessee defense. But I think, again, they, like maybe a couple of different positions on this team, I think that, you're saying set up really well for next year. What can they do this year in getting all those pieces to the right spot?
Yeah, I just don't really see it.
Me neither.
Unless Jordan Norman becomes a all SEC type dude and is flirting with double-digit sacks, which isn't impossible. But it is a tall ask for him. Like, I just don't really see a path to this edge group, and this being a front four that rushes the passer very well.
Last year we were pretty low on the wide receivers. Maybe this group can kind of step into that role. So obviously fall camp is, it's predicted for a reason, but I'm with you there.
We were also low on the interior of the defensive line going into last year, and it was pretty bad. So I'll say this, though. On the other side, at like the pure defensive end spot, I'm curious what you get from Weathersby. Like, he's a fourth-year guy, but he hasn't really played much. Like, last year's his first year, like, consistently on the field, and he was still in kind of that third role behind Dominic Bailey and Tyree West. So what they get from Weathersby, I think, is a huge question and is really pivotal. My bold take that I kind of tossed in a little earlier, by the end of the year, I think Marion Dye will be your guy at defensive end. Whether that means he's starting or just playing more snaps, I think Marion Dye will be like, okay, that's your defensive end. Next year, that's you pencil him in as defensive end one. I really like what he brings to the table. I thought he had a good freshman year in the chances he had, which, again, he was kind of the fourth guy on the depth chart then behind Dominic Bailey and Tyree West and Tyree Weathersby, and then it was Marion Dye. But he's going to get his chances this year. They need him to be productive this year. I think that it could be a situation where at first you're still kind of getting used to things, and maybe he doesn't jump off the page in the first couple games. But by the time they kind of get in the swing of SEC play, I think he's going to start to look like a guy that you're really excited about going forward, that is making an impact on a game-by-game basis for Tennessee. It's just still – it can't be just Marion Dye, Tyree Weathersby, Jordan Norman. Like, three guys isn't enough. And even then, we're talking about three question marks, like three guys that haven't done it, at least at Tennessee. Like, Jordan Norman was good last year at Tulane, and he was good in games against Ole Miss and stuff like that. But you still, like, it's still a question mark. And the question mark – and I say that not that it's bad. Like, Colton Hood was a question mark going into last year, and he was the best player on the team. So Jermod McCoy is a question mark going into 2024, and he was the best player on the team. So it doesn't mean that it's bad, but it is a question mark. Tyler Weathersby is a question mark. Mariana is a question mark. It's a bunch of question marks there, which goes to Jim Knowles' point where he's like, we'll see what happens. You don't know until it starts. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll figure it out as time goes on. But the question is, who for Tennessee? Who's this guy in the room this year?
I'm about to get money today. I promise I'm about to get money.
Who's the guy going out there to make some money? We shall see. All right, so full transparency for our final position group of, I guess, our fall camp preview. Full transparency, I've had notes for every single position group, but you might have seen me reading off of them, except for one, and that's the linebackers group. I felt like it was probably going to be our shortest preview of certainly the defense, but probably the team overall, and I feel like it's probably the easiest to talk about. Now, there have been two wrenches thrown in the situation. Obviously, we know that Tennessee will not have Arion Carter for the first two games against Furman and Georgia Tech. We also now know that Tennessee will not have sophomore linebacker Jaden Harmon due to a season-ending injury. Regardless, though, still a deep group, still a very strong group. I think that this is who you rely on in the center of that field. I think Tennessee's got four guys they will rotate through very strongly. I think you've got a fifth that'll certainly try to make his way in there. Again, you've got Arion Carter, you've got Edwin Spillman, you've got Amari Campbell, you've got Jeremiah T-Lander, you've got Jaden Perlotti. Those are your five dudes. If it were up to me, I think Harmon kind of would have been, at the end of that list. And then you've got these two freshmen who I don't think you'll see, but we'll obviously be talking about them in the next coming years with TJ White and Braden Rouse. But this Tennessee linebacker group, I think the fan base is very familiar with the fact that this is a group of dudes, and they got a chance to be good in the middle of the field for William Minge's defense.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for Jaden Harmon. You don't want to see anyone get hurt. But again, if you're going to pick a spot, as you talked about, like who can't you lose? Like who can you lose? Someone in the linebacker room because they're so deep. You don't want to lose anyone. I'm not saying you're hoping someone got injured, but it's by far the deepest position group on the team. Even then, I don't know how much Jaden Harmon really would have factored in this year. Like even if you do get a lot of three linebacker looks on the team, we talked about how you can insert a third linebacker if you want to give Quay Moss a rest or if he gets banged up a little bit. You can also insert a third linebacker if that Leo spot's just really like, hey man, the pass rushing isn't good. Let's just get another linebacker out there. They can try to get after the quarterback. You have guys capable of that, like Edwin Spillman, Jaden Perlotti, Arion Carter. Like they have a few guys that I think they're comfortable with playing kind of a little bit hybrid, still a 3-3, but a little bit more hybrid as an edge rusher. I don't know how much Jaden Harmon would have factored into it. Like you have the clear three guys at the top of the room. I think when they fully get going, Arion Carter's back in the mix. It'll probably be Carter and Amari Campbell starting. Edwin Spillman, to me, might be your best linebacker on the team, though. So if you're talking about the top three, I think that's a clear top three. Behind that, Jeremiah T-Lander's played a bunch of football. Can he take maybe an additional step? Can the Derek Owings offseason program help him gain a step faster in his foot speed and things like that? That he's already going to definitely play a role, but that could certainly lead to it. Jaden Perlotti looked fantastic as a freshman at times last year, just kind of a guy playing with his hair on fire. I think that's still what they want him to do, but maybe you get a little more comfortable going into your sophomore year, even though it's a new system, and that playing with your hair on fire is a little more under control at the same time, and you're able to be disruptive. And then I love the two freshmen they brought in between Braden Rouse and TJ White. I think those are fantastic additions. They're both guys that could play as early as this year. I don't know if they will because the room's so deep, but they certainly could. And they really, especially Braden Rouse, to me, feels like a future all-SEC linebacker. So I'm really excited about those guys. So you just have a wealth of talent there, which, again, is why I just feel like you have got to try to find as many ways as possible to get three linebackers on the field, whether that's going to a 3-3 or whether that's going to a 4-3. It just feels like the easiest way to cover up some depth issues, some question marks, is take advantage of the really strong position group you have of that linebacker room.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the Edwin Spillman take. I think he's the best linebacker in that room. I hope to see them. I don't really care who starts. I would get starting Amari Campbell and Arion Carter, so I don't really care who starts. I just want to see him play the most snaps of anybody in that room. I think T-Lander's a question mark. Like, look, there's been so much buzz around him, too. Two-time defender of the day, according to the Jim Knowles Twitter account. Like, there's clearly he's doing, playing well in practice. I'm in a bit of see it to believe it mode to see him play at a high level on the field. Obviously, we know he can go out there and play replacement level quality and, not be terrible. So we'll see. Perlotti, I think, is, to me, almost the X factor because he can do different things. And I think if you're going to play three linebackers in some ways, like, he's one that makes sense because he has a unique skill set. But yeah, this group has a really, really high floor. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. I don't know how high the ceiling is. Perlotti and Spillman probably control that more than anything, but I think this group at the very least is a very high floor and is going to be very solid and has, as we've talked about at length, an abundance of depth.
Well, when you talk about Thielander, Thielander's in the perfect spot. Like, if you're asking him to be the starter, then all right, like, he's going to be in the right spots. He's proven that the coaches trust him. He's probably the best linebacker 4 or 5 in the country, though. Like that, that's just how deep you are. That, like, I have absolutely no issue with what this room is shaping up to be, even if you're not the highest on Thielander, just because the spot he's probably going to be on the depth chart. Now, if they insert him into a starting lineup and he's playing the third most, he's playing more snaps than Edwin Spillman, then it's like, okay, maybe he really has taken that step. But as far as kind of what we project, I guess, where he's linebacker 4 or 5, hey, that's one of the better 4 or 5 linebackers, if not the best in the country.
And that's where it gets interesting. You look at, I think all of us are bullish on the secondary, even though there's some new pieces there. I think we all feel like we're extremely confident that we like the linebacker room. You've got 2 good levels of the defense right there. It goes back a second ago, though. What is the defensive line going to do to either add to that or to make their lives a little bit tougher? Whether it is not getting to the quarterback quick enough and making the secondary play 5-6 seconds of a route, whether it is helping out the linebackers by getting to the run a little bit quicker and allowing those linebackers to just come in downhill and try to make an impact with their hit style. Whatever it is, I just think that, again, you go back to the defense as a whole. What is the defensive line going to do to either add to this defense or to make it a little bit tougher for these 2 position groups that I think that we all really like just on paper heading into this season, even with a couple of injuries that have happened? I don't think anybody here is too concerned about the suspension for Arion Carter. Look, if you can't beat Georgia Tech without Arion Carter, like, the season has bigger problems as a whole, so I expect Tennessee to be able to get through that game, get Carter back on the field. I don't expect Carter to be missing a step once he returns to the field for game 3 and then Texas after that. So, I think that the defense, it's kind of weird. I think I like the defense more when you break it down into these sections than I probably did just talking about it overall as a whole going into things. But we'll see. That's kind of when, this is kind of the point of the preseason to talk about what things could be or what they project to be or what a ceiling is or what a floor is. And so it's interesting kind of looking at it from these 3 different levels.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, it's, as you said, feel good about the back 7. Promise front 4 is the most important part of the defense, and it's just hard for me to talk myself into it, especially the pass rush. So we'll see. I think they're going to have, Jim Knowles is known for his creativity, and I think he's going to have to get creative to generate a pass rush this year. And, we'll see how that pans out for Tennessee.
Is it taking the quarterback out of it, which is a tough thing to do, but let's just kind of enjoy this hypothetical for a second. Does this Tennessee season sort of come down to the trenches in some ways when we're talking about the defensive line? Obviously, we went back and forth a little bit over the offensive line there last week. Is that sort of the, is that sort of the maybe one of the projected defining aspects of this Tennessee team?
Well, look, you can name whatever team you want to name across the country. If you're good at quarterback, you're good at defensive line, you're good at offensive line, you're going to have a good season. And it's where those are the 3, in my opinion, 3 most important positions in football or position groups in football. Tennessee doesn't really have a question, maybe tight end, at any other position group outside of those 3. Like, they're very solid across the board. Agreed. They have 2 big questions at the 2 of the 3 most important, or at 2 of the 3 most important positions. And as I said I was doing a hit yesterday on a podcast, quarterback, I have some confidence, even though it's a question and it's young. Like, I have some confidence that they're going to be fine there. Like, they have good players around them. Like, I think both those guys are talented. Not that they're going to be amazing, but I think it's not going to derail them. I worry more about defensive line being okay than I do quarterback being okay.
That was a much more elegant way to say what I was trying to sort of pose as a question. You've got the three most important, arguably the most important positions on the field. At least two of them have a question mark to them. Now, obviously, you can be, a little bit more positive or a little bit more negative from a question mark, but at least two of them have, a question mark attached to it.
I like the
100%.
offensive line though. So
the offensive line doesn't have the offensive line question marks. Like, can it be best in the SEC as opposed to just being like pretty good? That's the question.
It's the same thing as I was saying. Like, a question mark doesn't have to be bad. It just means it's unproven. Like, Tennessee, Deshaun Bishop has been a question mark in his career, and now he's one of the best running backs in the SEC. Like, their question marks can become your strength. Am I confident that's what's going to happen on Tennessee's defensive line? No, but I do think the offensive line's pretty good. I agree with you, Shumpert, where I'm not overly worked up about quarterbacks, and that kind of leads to more of an overarching take that I'm sure we'll get into next week as we dive deeper into like a season preview and what this year's actually going to look like. The last thing I want to say about the defense is we kind of glossed over the Jim Knowles hiring, and there's only so much you can say about it until you actually see it on the field and you see it, really even against Georgia Tech. Like, they're just going to go out pure vanilla and not show anything against Furman and just out athlete them the entire game and win 70-0. But you hear this narrative throughout the entire offseason, and it was a valid one that, hey, the first year under Jim Knowles is rough. Like, it's not great. It's confusing for a lot of guys. It's really just trying to get acclimated before you really take a run in year 2 and year 3, and that's when you see the big jump. If it just doesn't feel like that's necessarily going to be the case this year. And of course, when he got to Ohio State and he got to some of his past stops, like, they're just as talented, if not more talented, than Tennessee is defensively this year. But the thing that he's talked about that's made a big difference is he's able to bring coaches with him. Before, he was kind of just the new DC with a bunch of new faces around him. Like, he has experience with Anthony Poindexter from Penn State. He has years of experience with AJ Jackson, the defensive or the Leo's coach. He's worked with Derek Jones in the past. He has a bunch of other different, not necessarily position coaches, but assistants that he's worked with that are helping guys. He has 3 players on the team that can help and have done it with him. I'm not saying they're going to be a top 10 defense this year, but I don't think there's as much of a reason to completely panic about year 1 Jim Knowles. And that's something that Jarice Farouk talked about too when I was talking to him at local media days. He was like, it's really, like, I've heard that stuff. It's just really not that hard to pick up what he's teaching. Like, you just kind of have to learn the new lingo. Like, it's fun. Like, he seemed really confident that this team wasn't going to struggle to pick things up early, which has kind of been the big worry. So I'm not saying Tennessee is going to take some huge step back to 2024 defense, but they should be like pretty better than they were last year. Like, they were bad last year defensively. Yeah. This should be like at worst, like, that's a fine defense at worst to me. Pass rush is the big question. Maybe it's so bad pass rushing that, some of your secondary play doesn't get a shine because they have to cover guys for so long and it's all intertwined. But I just think this defense at worst is going to be fine. And at best could be like, hey, that's a really good defense.
Yeah, I agree. Arian Carter had the same sort of thoughts on the Brooks Austin show during SEC Media Days. And I'm going to be missing some players. I just tried to circle them super quickly while you were saying that. But here's another reason why I think that Tennessee feels like – I've dropped my ring. Tennessee feels like I couldn't show myself without it. Tennessee feels like they have the horses in the stable to be able to – execute this at a high level. One of the reasons that Arian Carter gave was essentially what I'm about to say right now. Senior Amari Campbell, senior TJ Metcalf, junior Xavier Gillum, senior Quay Moss, senior Arian Carter, junior Dejon Lane, junior Edwin Spillman, senior Kane Lee, junior Idris Farouk, senior Tyrese Weathersby, senior Jeremiah T. Lander. I think that Nathan Robinson is a senior. Again, I'm missing a lot. I just circled a couple while I had the time, but there's a lot of experienced football players on this defense. And yes, those guys are talented too, and not all of them have been playing at Tennessee. Certainly not all of them have been playing under Jim Knowles, but you've got a bunch of guys who have played combined a ridiculous amount of snaps. I think that if there's any way to sort of buck that trend a little bit, it's being able to do so with smart football players who have played a lot on the field, have seen a lot of SEC ball, and I think that's the kind of group that Tennessee has here. Any other kind of final thoughts on the way out the door today?
Well, I agree with you, but the again, I mean, we're just hammering the same points home. But then the defensive linemen you named just haven't played that much. They're older, but they just haven't played. Like Tyree Weathersby hasn't played that much. Nathan Robinson
Agreed.
really only got in the mix last year, and he was banged up at times. So it's like, yeah, it still just points to the secondary should be improved. They might be the most talented secondary as a whole. The linebacker room's really deep. Was the defense line? I mean, it's an hour-long show to kind of say the same thing over and over again in some ways, but I think that's just another point to that where we'll see what that defensive line looks like. And I guess that's the difference between me saying, I mean, that's a fine defense if the defensive line kind of struggles, and that's a really good defense if the defensive line steps up and they have got to step up and make plays.
Better than expected, potentially. We'll see how everything shakes out. All right, that is Ryan Sylvia. You can follow him at Ryan T. Sylvia. That is Ryan Shumpert. You can follow him at Ryan Shumpert00. I am at Rick_Butler on social media. But of course, make sure you're checking out RockyTopInsider.com each and every day for just tons of Tennessee football news, notes, and coverage. Make sure you are subscribed to wherever you are getting this podcast in case you're listening to the audio version. And make sure you are certainly subscribed to the RTI YouTube channel. Hey, if you're really in depth with Tennessee football fall camp, if you're really a junkie about this kind of stuff, go ahead and even throw on notifications so that you do not miss any of the player and coaches interviews that are still set to come over the next couple weeks, including 2 Josh Heupel scrimmage breakdowns. Those are going to be must-hear interviews to see how things are going. Otherwise, make sure you're downloaded and make sure that you're going ahead and check out the WATE 6 Plus Smart TV app. Those are from our great friends over there at WATE. They've got great coverage this preseason as well. You can check out Ryan Sylvia and myself along with Sam Granville and Sam Rothman over on the WATE College Football 2026 preview show, talking a lot of Tennessee football over there as well. That is fun content as always. But as always, make sure you're just checking out RockyTopInsider.com each and every day. We will see you back next week. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass Podcast.